My brothers and sisters, and my beloved confreres, a very hearty welcome to each one of you to this Recollection Talk. We are entering into the new year 2022. As usual, most of us have made one or the other resolution in order to accomplish a new lifestyle in this new year. And most of us know most of those resolutions we make never get fulfilled. We forget about them, or we find them sometimes very boring. Sometimes they are very tiresome in the course of time, and we give up on them. Are our resolutions to be kept forever, or are they merely momentary? It's in this context I began to reflect a bit over the lifestyle that we need to have, not only in this new year, but also in this context of the modern era. As all of us know, lifestyle and life attitude has changed universally since the arrival of the pandemic, COVID-19. We are in a different life mode. Even the concept of civilization has to be redefined. We are finding it difficult to answer some of the fundamental questions about the meaning of life. And that's where I began to think we should have a definition of the kind of civilization that we would be planning out for our life from now on. Therefore, I wish to title this recollection talk as New Year, a route to the root. New Year, a route to the root. We need to have a route map in order to find the root of our life, the base of our life. When did civilization begin? Very many people say civilization began when cultivation began. Some others would say civilization began when constructions began. Or some others would say when technology boomed, civilization began. But from a Christian point of view, I would look at civilization as a new mode of living, a compassionate lifestyle. Compassion is the base of civilization. And I believe for this new year, this attitude of compassion, a bit more understanding and sharing of one's heart with the other without thinking of the profit will be the greatest resolution that we can make in our lives. New Year, a route to the root. When I speak about compassion, I cannot define it without thinking about one person, that is, Saint Francis of Assisi. Francis of Assisi is known to be a man who lived well the concept of compassion. It is said at the fag end of his life here on earth, when he had reached that climax of his attitude of compassion, it was very difficult for Francis to even blow off a candle because he felt, where will the fire go if I blow it off? This man who has reached to that level of a compassionate attitude even towards inanimate thing was not a compassionate man in the beginning part of his life. If you read through the testament of Francis of Assisi, you would find that the very first sentence there begins like this: when I was in sin. When I was in sin. What was that sin? As you know the history of Francis of Assisi, he was a soldier by profession. And as a soldier, he had killed perhaps many people. When I was in sin. It is that man who had killed many people perhaps, now not even able to blow off a candle. He has become helpless. He has become truly a compassionate person. I would rather say, as we would depict, he has become a woman, a compassionate person. Yes, my brothers and my sisters, let this new year invite us to that sense of compassion. I look at Jesus in the Gospels. I see him there writing on the ground something. A woman was caught in adultery. Naturally, those people, the men who were involved with her in this adulterous act, are not mentioned there. And she is brought before Jesus for a final judgment about her future. And the Gospel says Jesus was writing on the ground something. Jesus never before nor after this incident have ever written or read something. At least the evangelists do not mention anything about that. And many researchers have tried to find out what he might have written on the ground. Without any research, when I enter into the person of Christ, one thing that I am very sure Jesus wrote on the ground: compassion, compassion, compassion. Yes, my brothers and sisters, the resolutions for the new year should begin on the fundamental base of a new civilization of compassion. Are you a compassionate person? I would like to look at this root to the root, the attitude of compassion, from 5 points of view. They should guide and animate us to understand how well we have become compassionate people. The very first point is have an open mind. The fundamental question that I would ask myself is this: do you enjoy poetry or prose? Do you enjoy poetry or prose? When I go through the scriptures, I understand scriptures are the expressions of God's own poetry. God writes his song of compassion through the scriptures. One thing that we need to understand is we have to open up our mind system in order to get to know this poetry of God. Do you have an open mind to understand the wisdom of the Word of God? It is said very often, our philosophies are not our own. Philosophical interpretations and hermeneutic approaches have never made something new to philosophy, nor even in the context of theology. Theologization and philosophy are means wherein one shows forth one's own personal involvement. Interpretations are different from involvement. Very often we paraphrase words in abundance, interpret the views and ideologies of others, but without having any base for ourselves. There's a beautiful incident mentioned about the life of the famous Malayalam poet Kumaranashan. It is said Kumaranashan tried to interpret a good number of the writings of Srinarayana Guru. Srinarayana Guru asked Kumaranashan, "Kumara, are you trying to tie a bundle of hay with another rope?" In a satirical manner, Srinarayana Guru is telling Kumaranashan, you can never interpretatively understand the views of others. Enter into involvement. The question here is, are you thinking in the level of poetry or mere prose? It is said, in the mathematics books, you will find only 2 columns. Which are they? Profit or loss. These are the only 2 columns that you would find in the books of mathematics. you count in terms of profit, you are going to lose your basic aspect of compassion. Can you go beyond this profit mindset into a profitless lifestyle where you become more generous and compassionate to others? In the Bible, I believe in the book of Exodus, we find a statement there. It is said, throw your bread into the river. It comes from the Egyptian background, and the river mentioned is the river Nile. Throw your bread into the river. After the harvest, when they have tied up the bundle of the rice, some of those bundles the harvesters would throw into the river. And this would float over the water for a long time and come to the shore elsewhere. And there it begins to grow again. A profitless attitude so that someone else may profit through my self-emptying. A mindset. I always look at our missionaries. I wonder sometimes, why did they leave their homes? The possibilities of their lives, wonderful backgrounds, and going into an unknown land, working their lifelong, spending themselves out for the sake of the gospel. We have our own young missionaries working in one of the poorest countries of the world, Chad. They say it is the third poorest country in the world. And all these missionaries are below 50. They had been there waving away the heat, the poverty, and sicknesses like malaria and typhoid. Struggling to live themselves, but giving life to someone else. An open mind which gives an attitude of emptiness. Yes, my brothers and sisters, this kind of a mindset is the most important aspect of a compassionate person. The second point that I would like to emphasize to become compassionate in this new year is to have open eyes. It is said about Che Guevara, the famous Cuban-Argentinian Marxist revolutionary. He was killed in the Bolivian forests. When they finally found his dead body, his both eyes were opened. When they searched his body, they found a paper with a lot of writings on it. They thought it is some revolutionary ideas and we should find it out in order to make sure all his followers are arrested. As they opened this paper, they found they were mere love stories. Love stories that he had read elsewhere. His eyes were opened. Bible always say, seeing is an experience. An open eye is the sign of the experience of a person who involves in proper relationship with the other, who understands the feelings of the other, who is able to make sure that others are for love and relationship. It is here that we find eyes need to be opened. Certain times we develop a macho mindset, the so-called male-oriented lifestyle. What is that? We say a man should never cry. That was the kind of attitudes that we developed once upon a time. A man should never cry. I'm so happy in the recent film world, the younger generation, the artists are finding out a different approach to that. They cry. You know, tears are like vipers. They make our eyes more brighter. We are able to see. An open eye is a necessity today in order to make sure that we see the realities around us and accordingly, compassionately handle people and life situations in a better way. One of the greatest aspects of Jesus' personality was his ability to see better, see beyond. When the Pharisees and the Sadducees saw something that was immediate about the Sabbath, about the curing of the sick, or healing of a leprosy patient, whatever be the situation, Jesus saw beyond that the human dimension of God's intervention. God intervenes in the life of a person, not in an apparent way, but in a deeper manner, because God sees deeper than you and I. Do you have an open eye? There are a lot of people crying around us, people who are in need of our support. It may be in our families. Do you see the tears of your wife? Do you see the tears of your mother? Do you see the tears of your father, for that matter? Most probably, our fathers are the ones who are sidelined at home. Although they are considered the most powerful, we do not see their tears which they wipe away in the darkness. Open your eyes to see the reality of the other. There's a beautiful Sufi story. It goes like this. A man came to a Sufi guru. And when he came, he explained all his difficulties. And he told, I'm leaving this countryside and going elsewhere to live. At the end, the Sufi accompanied this man in this final journey from his home. As he returned to his house, the Sufi went to the mirror and looked into it. And he saw one of his eyes, his left eye, did not have tears, whereas the right eye was shedding tears. The Sufi immediately told God, Allah, look, why should I have an eye when it is not able to shed tears? And immediately Allah took away the sight in his left eye. Why should you have an eye when you are not able to shed tears for the other? You should have a compassionate attitude through an open eye to see beyond the peripheral. The third dimension to become compassionate in this new year is to have open ears. It is said, the most easiest picture to draw in the whole world is the picture of Sri Buddha. Two big ears and a small circle around it. You have Buddha. Even during the times of Buddha, they had drawn pictures of him in such a way he had two big ears. Why? He listened attentively to all those people who came to him. Today's tragedy is this. Most of us are hearing, but we are not listening. There's a vast difference between hearing and listening. Are you able to listen properly? Listening attentively is obedience. That means I enter into a deeper dimension of my relationship with that of the other person who is trying to communicate a message to me, not even verbally, even silently. When somebody is sad, are you able to listen to that person? When someone stands in a very fragile manner, are you able to listen to the hunger of his body? When somebody is struggling with psychological problems, are you able to support that person, hearing the voice of his mind? There should be a better listening today. Once again, I return to the gospel. Jesus listened attentively. First and foremost, Jesus listened with an open ear to the wish, the will of his Father. To leave behind the possibilities of heavens, Jesus listened attentively and took the human form and became one like us, except in sin. And thereafter, Gospels are stories about Jesus' lifestyle of listening attentively, whether it is a tax collector, whether it is a prostitute, whether it is a person who is sick, whether it is Gentiles, Jesus listened attentively. Interestingly, Jesus even listened to the Sadducees and the Pharisees. There are Sadducees and Pharisees whom Jesus appreciated, with whom he shared the meal. So it does not mean that Jesus was sidelining them. Even opposite views were taken seriously by the Lord, that he was able to listen attentively, understanding the context from which they are talking. Are you able to listen than merely to hear? We need to have open ears to become more and more compassionate. The cries of the poor around us are louder and louder. The situations of the poor at the roadside, people who are vendors who do not have homes, they all cry aloud today. And we who are in settled situations of our life should be able to open the doors of our ears and listen to those cries and give ourselves a bit more closely to their life situation. Are we able to listen attentively? The fourth point that I would like to discuss with you to involve in a life of compassion in this new year is to have an open heart. Yes, my brothers and sisters, we have that heart of Jesus before each one of us. Each time when we enter into a church, we see the Lord hanging on the cross with a pierced side, a heart that is opened. It is normally said the heart has got only the size of a fist. The moment you begin to enlarge that heart, you begin to break it a bit by bit. The heart becomes more and more vulnerable when you are able to enlarge your attitude towards others. And that is precisely the reason the Lord tells Solomon, I will give you a heart that is as large as the sands on the shore of the sea. Your wisdom is the result of the enlargement of your heart. Jalaluddin Rumi, in one of his poems, very beautifully mentions about human being as a guest home. And this attitude of the guest home is to have a house without a door. Everyone can enter into. Look at that wonderful parable mentioned by Jesus, this parable of the Good Samaritan. Who is the hero in that parable? It is a Samaritan, a non-Jew, someone who is outside the Jewish tradition, someone who can never be considered as a neighbor to a Jew. Jesus promotes him as the hero of his parable and gives him that adjective, Good Samaritan. My brothers and sisters, this is the tragedy of our lives. We are not open enough to understand the goodness of others. Suppose if you are going to buy some good books for your children, have you ever thought of buying a book which is not part of your religious tradition? Have you ever any time told a story of a guru who belongs to another religion to your children? Have you made their heart a bit more bigger than that they really are? Our attitudes need to be shared. Our attitudes need to be developed. To that extent, we are able to bring everyone together into one fold, one God, one humanity. And that is precisely the reason for this enlargement of our hearts. I believe we need to go a bit more further in order to understand the value of our lifestyle. Make our hearts a bit more bigger, break it. Let there be blood pouring out for the sake of the other. Our traditional belief systems, our beliefs of turning this side or that side, should never affect our big heart for the humanity which is around us. My brothers and sisters, become people of open hearts so that compassion can flow out of it, just like from the heart of Jesus. The fifth point that I would like to share with you to become more compassionate in this new year is to be people with wounded feet. The Gospels invite us to go 1 mile extra with those people who ask us to walk with them. Accompaniment is the call of the day. Especially in the context of our family life and in the context of our religious formation, one of the most ingredient elements of formation in families and seminaries and in the religious congregations is to accompany, to walk with the others. Do you walk with your children when they are small? Do you walk with your parents when they are old? Do you really walk with your life partner, your husband and your wife? This walking would make you feel with them more. That's why religious formation, especially in the modern context, should be an accompaniment, a formator walking with the formee, so that you would get the right pulse of their lifestyle. It is said, the greatest imprint that you are going to make in the lives of others is when you return, that is, when you die, how better you made the place you lived in, as well as how noble you made the people who were living with you. These two dimensions can make life different. They would make a new history all about you. The way you made the place better and the people more noble is the stamp on your wounded feet. It is said, when Muhammad Bashir was put in the jail, one of the works that he used to undertake was to plant rose plants. Why? The reason was to walk a bit more. He knew that his stay in the jail would be for a few months or few years maximum. But he wanted those who come after him to enjoy those flowers which he is now already foreseeing. To walk with the other, the accompaniment dimension of our life, is a compassionate attitude. Yes, my brothers, my sisters, I have just shared with you a heartfelt feeling, a feeling that the world should be more compassionate. Our New Year resolutions should always make us people who are with open mind, open eyes, open ears, open heart, and a wounded feet. I wish each one of you God's abundant blessings in this new year. May you enjoy the fruits of it through your way of compassion and an attitude of benevolence. Amen.